the Hague
Kia
Initiative
ora,
for
talofa
International
lava.
A
Cooperation.
very important
And almost every language
Israel
other than
Institute of New
English and
Zealand.
My
French.
roots come from Jerusalem.
I'm Ashley Church. I'm here with Dr. David Cumin from the Israel Institute of New Zealand, and this is the Israel Report. And David, I want to talk today about the security situation that faces Israel in the Middle East and the position that it finds itself. This is a nation of 8 million people.
9.
9 million
It's
people.
just gone over 9 million.
No, just gone over 9 million people. If you're aged between 18 and 20, you are required to do military service. You're conscripted into the military to do military service, whether you're male or female. So this is a nation that is in, I guess it's fair to say, a permanent readiness for war. Why does Israel find itself in that position? Unfortunately,
that's the case. But like many things, Israel has turned its adversaries and its challenges into opportunities, and the military is no different. So not only does everyone have to go to the military, but it's also a great training place. So people gain skills, and it's part of the fabric of society as well. So it's not all bad, but unfortunately, you're right. Israel does need to have a strong military and be ready for war because it's surrounded by essentially enemies. And that was seen in 48 when Israel declared independence. It was immediately attacked by all of the surrounding Arab nations in a war that the leader, the general of the League, the Arab League, said would be a war of annihilation.
Yep.
So this was a determined attempt to extinguish the Jews.
Nothing confusing about that.
From Israel. And he was considered a moderate. So the war in 1948 was a war for independence, but Israel has also had to defend against full military from all sides invasion in 1967 as well. There was a war in 73, and there was, of course, the war of attrition in 56. So there's always been this sense of the Arab nations wanting to destroy Israel.
So I think one of the claims, or one of the accusations that's levelled at Israel from time to time, is that it's a strong military power that has ambitions for expansion and that exerts its authority in the Middle East. Is that fair?
I think there's a hint of truth only in that Israel does have a strong military. And having faced at least 3 full military invasions.
So strong military by necessity rather than...
Sure, the reasons for it we've kind of discussed, but the claim that Israel has a strong military isn't argued. And the Arab nations have had to come to realise that Israel has a might to resist their invasions, but they haven't quite recognised the right of Israel to exist as an equal nation. And that's the heart of the conflict. Where that statement and that claim is wrong is that Israel is not an expansionist country. And anyone who says so is denying history and denying truth, because Israel captured about 3 times as much land as it currently has in the 1967 war.
Yep.
And with a peace treaty afterwards, many years afterwards with Egypt, it gave back the Sinai Peninsula, which is a large piece of land. And it gave back a small piece of land to Jordan in its peace treaty with Jordan.
Yep. So
So Israel has been willing to give up land for peace. It's offered land to the Arab Palestinians in exchange for peace.
peace, yep.
So an expansionist state wouldn't do that.
So I want to pick up on that and just talk about Israel's role, a larger role in the Middle East. And so if you think about the contiguous boundaries that it has with its neighbouring countries, it's got Lebanon, Syria, Jordan and Egypt, and it has a peace treaty ostensibly with both Egypt and with Jordan. But the issues that face it aren't just those neighbouring nations, and I think particularly of a nation like Iran that's got very strong aspirations when it comes to its goals with regard to Israel. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the Islamic Republic of Iran has continuously threatened Israel with annihilation. There's the famous chant, "Death to Israel, death to United States," in the streets. And they've recently also said that they now think they have the capability to annihilate the Jewish state. So Iran is a real threat, particularly in the wake of the nuclear deal, which has given it a lot of money.
Yep.
And allowed it to easily break away to a nuclear weapon at the end of that deal. Yep. So hopefully there's going to be something that will constrain Iran more tightly in the works. But it's not just Iran from the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is
Syria,
which is Persian and not Arab and a little bit further away. Iran's proxy terror groups in Gaza with Islamic Jihad and Hamas, they fund those groups to terrorise Israel. They fund the Hutus in Yemen, which isn't a direct threat to Israel, but threatens Saudi Arabia and is responsible for terrible loss of life.
Yep.
And Iran's most successful export is actually Hezbollah, which is in the south of Lebanon, on the border with Israel. And they have 120,000 missiles under homes and villages ready to attack Israel if the call is made.
So in a very real way, the role that Israel plays in the Middle East is actually not just protecting itself and its own people, but in fact acts as a proxy protector for countries like Jordan and other countries in the Middle East.
Well, no, Israel's taken quite a conservative approach. So even if you look at the Syrian civil war, Iran has come in there along with Russian forces to support Assad and his butcher of Syrians. And Israel has taken a very deliberate, strategic, political and military decision to not go after and attack unless they are threatening Israel. And Israel's also said, we will help people with medical aid who come to the border that need it, regardless of which faction they're with and which side they're on, because we think all life is important.
Which is what humanitarian nations do.
It's exactly right, not expansionist nations. No. So Israel has not gone to overtly and directly protect other countries, because Israel's first concern, and it's a big concern, is protection for itself.
Of course.
But Israel, the ascendancy of Iran and the threat of Iran to the whole Middle East has been recognised. And this is ironically something that Obama might deserve the Nobel Prize for letting the Gulf states, the Arab states, realise that Israel's not the biggest problem in the Middle East. And actually Israel might be part of the solution. And now there's a more open relationship between some of the Gulf states and Israel in not only security and how to combat threats, but also in all sorts of other technological and water security and other issues. And I think that's a positive development, unfortunately.
Now, you've done a video, one of our video series on this very topic, which we're going to show today, where we talk about these issues and we talk about the relative position of Israel in the Middle East and its security position. So let's have a look at that video now.
The media portrayal of Israel as an aggressive and dominant military power in the Middle East is at sharp contrast with the reality of the situation facing this tiny state. While Israel is well prepared for war, and every Israeli man and woman aged between 18 and 20 is required to complete compulsory military service, this is the response by Israel to a history of having to defend herself from aggressive Arab and Muslim neighbours. Consider the reality of the position Israel finds herself in today, surrounded by countries which are, between them, 650 times as large as Israel, with 50 times as many people, many of them harbouring a deep hatred of Israel, to the point that some have expressed a desire to destroy the Jewish state. If you consider this, you begin to get a sense of why a strong army is a necessity. The threats are also hard to defend against. Israel's borders are difficult to defend due to the demographic, geographic, and political challenges that few other nations could endure. This makes Israel's task in maintaining sovereign borders and defending its civilians, as is the right of every other nation on earth, particularly difficult. In her short 70 years of modern history, there have been at least 4 attempts to annihilate Israel, with united attacks by Arab nations in 1948, 1956, 1967, and in 73. So it should come at no surprise that she would be determined to defend herself. And the threats are not just from Israel's neighbours. The Islamic Republic of Iran has consistently threatened Israel with attack and annihilation, and made progress towards developing nuclear weapons with which to enact those threats. In 2012, Iran's military chief of staff declared, "The Iranian nation is standing for its cause, and that is the full annihilation of Israel." And Iran hasn't just limited itself to its own nuclear ballistic program. It's also spent millions of dollars funding terror groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, which has stockpiled more than 120,000 missiles under villages on the border with Israel. Iran also funds terror groups in Gaza that fire rockets indiscriminately into Israeli territory, and has also been behind attacks on Israelis and Jews living abroad. Iran has links to the bombing of the Jewish Community Center in Argentina in 1994, and the suicide bombing of a busload of Israelis in Bulgaria in 2012. It is precisely because of these threats and others, as well as the constant threat of other forms of Islamist terror, that Israel has had to develop sophisticated techniques and equipment to survive. Sadly, due to an increasing number of terror attacks worldwide, these techniques and tools are now also increasingly required by other nations. One of the many examples of this would be the role that Israeli intelligence played in helping to foil an attack on an Australian passenger aircraft in 2017. And Israeli cybersecurity systems are being used by companies and governments around the world to foil digital attacks. Israeli disaster response teams have also been deployed to major events worldwide because of their expertise. It's generally understood that if Israel were ever to lose her security advantage, or a war, this beacon of democracy would disappear. Israel would quickly fall victim to another genocide, and the world would see the creation of another repressive Islamic state where Israel currently exists. Perhaps a day will come when Israel can exist with open borders and minimal defence, at peace with her neighbours. But that day is not today. For now, the world needs the tiny Jewish state to hold back a tide that, left unchallenged, threatens to overwhelm us all. I'm Dr. David Cumin for the Israel Institute of New Zealand. The Hague Initiative for International Cooperation.
A very important
Almost every language the Israel Institute of New Zealand.
My roots come from Jerusalem.